But we want players who want to come to Newcastle United. And from what we're led to believe, Hugo Ekitike, as soon as Liverpool came in, didn't want to come to Newcastle United. He wanted to go to Liverpool. And I know we're going to touch on this later as to, what we're going to do going forward. Where do we go from here? But I think a big chunk of that, I've got a little answer for that. But yeah, in my opinion, it just feels like I put this tweet out earlier. It feels like we're reaching for the stars, which there is no problem in doing. There's absolutely no problem in doing it. And great that the club are trying to do that. But you need a backup plan. You need a backup plan. You can't then freeze and go, ooh, back to the drawing board. What should we do? And that's certainly how it feels. It feels like we're maybe, what was the analogy I was thinking of before? It's like going to an auction house. You get a tip off that there's this fantastic house available and it's 100 grand. And you go there with your 100 grand and you're like, ooh. And everybody else turns up who's multimillionaires and it starts going 110, 120, 140, 180. And then you go home to your wife and she goes, did you get the house? No, I got outbid. Well, what else are you going to do? I don't know. And it's like, but that's not it. It's not feasible, is it? It's not feasible to go in thinking I'm going to go and get this, knowing that you're probably going to get outbid. And this is the problem that we're having with the likes of Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, Man United, because they've got all the history, they've got the capability to put the wages down. Most players, and I know we won't like to hear this, most players are motivated by money. Whether you like it or not, they are. And there will be players who will look at Newcastle United, we've seen it with Anthony Elanga, and go, oh, I'd love to come. I'd love to come. And it's not to say that any of the players that haven't joined don't want to join Newcastle United. But if you had a choice, ask yourselves this at home, if you had a choice of going to this work or this work, but they're offering double the wages, where are you going to go? It's a no-brainer. There's no personal connection to Newcastle United. We'd all love to go to Newcastle United, and at the drop of a hat, we'd go to Newcastle United. But some of these players have no affinity to the club. So this is why it makes it all the more difficult. And I almost feel like we've lost, and I hate saying this word because we used to bang on about this word a lot. I feel like we've lost our identity a little bit. It's almost like we're trying to level up and we're going, right, we're here. We're Champions League, 2 seasons out the last 3. We qualified for the Champions League. We should be going for the best players. And I totally agree with that. But you've got to appreciate when you're going for that top quality, top caliber of player, there's a strong chance there's going to be other people who are going for it as well. There's other people who are going to want that player. And when you're struggling to match the wages, when you're struggling to pay the transfer fee, you've got to understand that there's probably a slim chance or a slim hope of you getting that player. And I just feel like, when we went in for Bruno Guimaraes, we knew Arsenal were interested, but there was a little bit of, uncertainty. Sven Botman, same. AC Milan went for him, but there was a little bit of uncertainty there. We capitalised on that. And you look at Alexander Isak, loads of clubs wouldn't take the risk on him. We paid a premium price for him, but loads of other clubs wouldn't take that risk. We did. Brilliant. But when you start looking at players who have really performed, like the Liam Delap one, for example, that was always going to be a difficult deal to do because 30 million was a steal. But surely the ownership are going to be looking at that and going, who else do you think is going to be in for Liam Delap? A long list of clubs. So really, you throw your offer in and, you try and tempt him to the club, but then you move on very, very quickly. And then obviously you're looking at João Pedro. João Pedro, it was known that Brighton wanted rid of João Pedro, and João Pedro wanted to leave the club. As soon as the Chelsea come in, you're going to have to move on pretty quickly because Chelsea are going to offer him the world and more. Chelsea were able to offer him a World Club football, and he goes and wins the Club World Cup. But he went on and won it though, didn't he? So
I've been told it's a proper trophy now.
Is it? That's by Charlie, is it?
Surprisingly, by Charlie, a proper trophy now. They've won it. And when I laughed at it, he said, "Oh, we're just jealous." I said, "Yeah, I'm jealous at the money you earned from it, not the trophy." We had a long back and forth conversation on that, but
you know where I'm going with this, boys. That's the general consensus, and I feel like we've lost our identity a little bit, and we're shopping in a market that is very unrealistic. Like I saw that a lad linked earlier, and I don't want to spoil it, but I saw the lad linked. I think it was from Nice, and I'm thinking he looks decent. Yeah. He looks good. He's around the 30 million mark. That's where we need to be, because if we go in for that lad, we're probably going to be competing with teams who were I'm just making this up now, but teams who are maybe, fourth down to eighth in all the various leagues, then they look at Newcastle and go, "Ooh, actually, Premier League. Oh, I like this. We're not going to be competing with Arsenal for them. We're not going to be competing with Man City for them, and we're not going to be competing with Chelsea for them or Liverpool." So sometimes you just got to knock yourself down a little bit and go, "Do you know what? Let's take the risk and let's go for the player with potential and see if we can build them up." But at the moment, we're shopping at Harrods, and we've got bare minimum. There's not much in the kitty, and the reason that we're not getting any over the line is because we're getting outbid, and we're not able to compete. And it's a sad state of affairs. In 5 or 10 years' time, this won't be a problem, but at the moment, it is a problem, and it's something that the ownership need to understand, and they need to, whether it's telling Eddie Howe, whether it's telling the coach that, I'm just saying, listen, this is great, but what's Plan B? What's Plan C? Because at the moment, it feels like there is no Plan B or Plan C, and we've put ourselves in a really awkward situation. Sorry, Pete.
No. To be fair, you've touched on something that I was going to kind of explore in a bigger range, because I'm with you. I'm with you here. And look, my early thoughts are, and I've just brushed through the Ekatike exact situation. I'm gutted to lose out on Ekatike. Yeah. I think we could have secured him. I genuinely think we could have. I think all this talk about he chose Liverpool over Newcastle. No, Newcastle walked away from the table, which fits into, I think, what Chris is saying here in terms of why we didn't get him. We could have gone toe-to-toe with Liverpool. May not have won, but we could have gone toe-to-toe with Liverpool. We chose not to. We walked away. And unfortunately for me, that has been a theme for Newcastle United quite a lot recently, is Newcastle getting cold feet when another big team comes in and we walk away. And actually, that just shows the weak position that Newcastle United are in right now. We are in such a weak position. We did it with João Pedro. As soon as Chelsea came into the mix, it was almost like the club went, nah, we've lost before we even kicked the ball. You know how many times people say that about top teams? Like top teams win the game before they've even gone onto the pitch, because the opposition team are so worried about how big that team are and their capabilities. That's what's happened to us. We're the guys that mentally have lost the game before we've even gone onto the pitch. We've not even tested the waters. We're not even gone toe-to-toe with them and seen what we're capable of.
We did it against Man United in the Carabao piece. We watched it. That's exactly what happened in the Carabao Cup final against Man United. We were beat before we even walked on the pitch. The occasion got to us.
Is that we're now taking that out of football, off the pitch and behind the scenes. Now, you mentioned, Chris, that we've lost our identity. I don't think the club has lost its identity, certainly on the pitch. Eddie Howe knows what he wants from his team.
Not on the pitch.
We play a particular way. We have lost our identity above Eddie Howe. We have in the boardroom. The boardroom is non-existent right now, and the boardroom for me is not. Is the sole reason why we have not brought in more players this summer. This is not on Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe has had to pick up the pieces. Now it's very, very clear now from what's been brought out in the last 2 days that Paul Mitchell has been an absolute prick. I'm going to say it. I don't care. He has thrown Eddie Howe under the bus here. Eddie Howe was on his holidays thinking there was a plan in place, and without even bothering to tell him, left the club. Gone.
Second day of his holidays.
Yeah, Eddie Howe did not know about that. Eddie Howe has had to pick up the pieces on this situation. So anybody that's out there that's going, oh, Eddie Howe's not done this, Eddie Howe's not done that, he shouldn't have needed to, but he's had to, and he's had to pick up the pieces to try and keep Newcastle United in the position they are, where they are still trying to fight for top players. This is that situation, and how this summer has started has all been on Paul Mitchell for walking away, because he's ruined the structure and he's ruined it without prior warning, without notice. It's clear now from what's been said. It's clear that that's out there. That's the issue. The other problem is, and this gets into a bigger conversation, and I'm going to kind of say a few things on this because I've been thinking about it over the last 24, 48 hours about Newcastle United. And I'm looking at this situation and I'm looking at, okay, Brian Mbeumo, we wanted his first choice, didn't quite get it over the line. We wanted Mateus Cunha. didn't have the money to put forward or didn't want to, whatever reason he wanted Man United, fair enough. So those two, because they wanted other clubs, that's fine. If a player wants to go to another club, that is absolutely fine. That is their prerogative. João Pedro, for me, was in play. We could have got João Pedro. We could have absolutely, if we wanted to, and we'd have gone more for him, we could have got him. You're looking now at Ekitike. I put him in the same bracket. If we wanted to, we could have had Hugo Ekitike signed by this weekend. I said it to you, Daz, before we went live. I said, if we'd have really wanted to make it happen, we would have signed Hugo Ekitike and he would have been in the stands watching the Celtic game, albeit probably wouldn't have wanted to watch it, seeing the result now. But he would have been in the stands. We could have got that done and dusted and got him in the door. Trafford is another conversation that we'll come back to later on in the show, but that's a similar situation. So we're looking at situations now where we're losing out on players. And for me, it boils down to a bigger picture here. Where are Newcastle United now? Now, Newcastle United, for me, in my opinion, are in a bit of a crossroads here. Newcastle United are in a crossroads for a little bit of what Chris has touched on and a little bit on what I've touched on. Is that Newcastle United are now fighting with the big boys for players that they want to take them to the next level. Hugo Ekitike, João Pedro, Brian Mbeumo, Matheus Cunha. We are no longer in a position where we can steal these players from other clubs and think that we can get them on a cheaper wage, on a cheaper fee, because it doesn't work like that. And the reality is, regardless of what we think about this, is that with the players that we're looking at right now, we are unfortunately at the bottom of that rung of clubs that are looking at these same players. When these players, it doesn't matter what we think about and how much we love this club, on the hierarchy of this situation, Newcastle United are at the bottom of that rung. Dean Huijsen, we would have paid the 50 million, but of course he's going to want to go to the biggest club in the world, in Real Madrid. Of course he is. We're never going to win that battle.
Yeah.
Brian Mbeumo, brilliant season, amazing season, would be perfect for Newcastle United. He wanted Man United because of regardless of their position in the league, their heritage and the status of that club. Sometimes the status of the club is sometimes more of a pull than actually where the club is in their competition and where they are. It's just a reality, regardless of what we think about it.
And of course, a little bit of that as well, Pete.
And a little bit of that as well, of course. Of course. Yeah. You've also got the likes of João Pedro. Heritage Club, Chelsea. We could argue that, we're just in an equal position as Chelsea, but then Chelsea just go and win the Club World Cup, beating PSG. That almost kind of justifies his reason for going there. He can pull that trophy out and go, this is why I joined the club.
Pete, after the game, that's exactly what he did. He has it on his knee and he went, this is why I joined the club. And It's like, well, you can't really argue that.
And you can't. Hugo Ekitike, he's going to the Premier League champions. This is not a case of, fighting tooth and nail for him and losing out. Newcastle United walked away because they knew that Liverpool were going to offer bigger fee. Liverpool were going to offer bigger wages, and the pull of going to the Premier League champions and the heritage that Liverpool hold within the world is always going to be a bigger pull for him than anybody else. And this goes back to the point that I just made. Newcastle United are at a crossroads. What do they do? What do they do now? Is it? I just wanted to kind of
you land first, Pete.
I'm just because it just there's some questions and it might actually bring in a further conversation here, like because we're looking at these players and Daz, we've had a separate conversation about this. One of those players in part of this conversation is Johan Wissa. Okay, so we can maybe have that conversation now. We could talk about Wissa in a bit more of a detail. I've just changed the slide over because we're looking at Hugo Ekitike. We're looking at those types of players, those high-profile players. There's a few players that I've suggested as well. I've suggested a couple of players that I think would be top-tier players. One of them is Goncalo Ramos. Huge wages. No, in fact, not huge wages. Huge fee, potentially. Not so much wages, but a high-profile player that you could bring in. We've all talked about him, and Daz, you mentioned him as well. Benjamin Sesko. Young profile, or Sesko, yeah, depending on how you pronounce it. Young profile, has potential to grow. Maybe not in the mold of what we've been looking at in terms of playing on the wing or a number 10, but he's a high-profile forward that you can bring in. We could be looking at that, but we're going to have the same issue again. Man United are linked with Benjamin Sesko. So we're going to be back in that moment again. Goncalo Ramos, if he genuinely becomes available, you've already got AC Milan linked with him. You're going to have Chelsea. You're going to have multiple clubs that are going to be looking at a Goncalo Ramos, right? So you're going to be back in the same box again. Or, and this might be why this link has come in, or you maybe look at a different scenario. You look at a lesser tier player in Johan Wieser. You look at an alternative. Yes, he's 28, nearly 29. We know that. I haven't got an issue with older players because for me, there has to be an element of buying for now, not always buying for the future. I am sick and tired of us looking at a player and going, oh, yeah, if we sign him, he's got a sell-on fee. I don't want my players to leave Newcastle. I want them to be here. I want for the here and now, not for because we can make 20, 30, 40 million on them in the future. I don't care. I just want the best team possible right now. In the words of LB, and he's been telling me this for the past year with regards to Man City and their failings this season, I don't care. I just want to win. I'm Newcastle United. I don't care. I just want to win. I don't care what age they are. I don't care whether they've got a sell-on value. I want them in the team. And you cannot argue that 20 goals in a season for Johan Wieser at a lesser fee with less teams after him is a viable option. Another one potentially. Jean-Philippe Mateta. Great season at Crystal Palace. Less teams going to be in for him. A potential that you are the top tier team looking at someone like him in the market. These are just examples, by the way. We could name 20, 30, 40 more. Easy. Or do you look at, and a player that you just mentioned, Chris, do you look at Ivan Gessan as an alternative? A player that is going to cost you, as you said, Chris, 30 million, but you're going to be at the top of the table in the clubs that he's going to want to come to. A guarantee. Another one, Callum Owendo at Rennes. Another one that's been linked with Newcastle United. If he became available, you're the top tier that you're going to go for. It's an affordable fee. He's going to want to come to you above anybody else. Yes, he's not the be-all and end-all ready-to-go player, but he's another one that Eddie Howe, getting him in his training camps, getting him ready for the season, could well be the next guy. I'm going to move on just really quickly, and then I'm going to get you boys into it. I'm going to run through it really quickly. Same situation with this man here, and we'll come back to him in a second. Has everything. England number one potential, has everything. We don't want to pay the fee. Okay, but we've haggled for 3 or 4 weeks now, and now Man City have got the jump on us. So, do we continue to hold and be that team that just goes, yeah, we'll wait to see what Man City do, and if they don't want him, then we'll take him, yeah? No, we should be looking and going, you know what, you don't want to come to us, or you're not willing to negotiate on the fee? Fine, we'll go elsewhere. We'll get this man instead. We'll go and get Chevrolet from Lyon. We'll go and pay the money because we can afford to pay it, an equally as good goalkeeper and a player that will want to come and play for us in the Champions League. Or do you go with experience and go for a player that we know very well, who we know is only, 15 or 20 million? You go and get Magic Mike. From AC Milan. You go and get Magic Mike because you know he wants to leave AC Milan. You offer him Champions League football. You might have to pay a few more wages in terms of high price than you would pay a Pope or a Trafford or a Dubravka, but you know you're getting a Champions League level goalkeeper. Or do you go the other way and do the other thing where you're the top team and you get Lemons from Royal Antwerp, who's a highly thought of young goalkeeper, one that we've talked about in our goalkeeper show on the Fully Loaded Transfer Show earlier on in the summer.
Months ago.
So, this is the thing with Newcastle United. Where are we right now? I'll throw you one more, and then Daz come in, because I just wanted to raise this point, because these thoughts have been going through my head the last 24, 48 hours. Do we do we continue to persist with this man where he's leaving, he's not leaving, we don't know. 1 minute is 30 million, 40 million, 50 million, 6 million. We don't know the price. And we're just kind of waiting. Or do we go for the other high profile and go, you know what, they want 50 million? Let's just go pay it because we know how good that guy is. Or are we just going to wait? Or do we go, as we've talked about, for the lesser tier player? Do we go for a Leo Balerdi, who may not have the profile of a Scalvini or a Gay, but has the potential to be a Scalvini or a Gay? You can get him at a decent price. Do you go back and get a Malik Chow from AC Milan? You know the fee's less because Como nearly bought him for what, 20, 25 million euros? So you know you can get him. Do you build him into a player? Or do you get the player that Keith Downey linked us to the other night, Cesar Terrega at Valencia, who's played in the under-21s Euros, looked really, really good, 6'4", monster, great tackler, quicker than you think. Do we go and get a younger player like that? Will be difficult. Talk about that one in a bit. Or do you go and get the young German international Besak, who looked really, really good last season for Inter Milan? Do you go in a different direction? This is, for me, what Newcastle United need to decide now. Do they want to keep going and being the little bro of these transfer targets when all the other big teams are just outbidding us, outwaging us, and just getting all these players? Or do we go for the young guns to make them better? Or do we go for the tier down and pay a lesser fee, but you're going to be the top of the table? As you mentioned, Chris, earlier, at the top of the table for those particular players. So those players are jumping over fences to get to Newcastle United because they want to play for that club. And Eddie Howe said he only wants players that want to play for Newcastle United. Do you drop down and go to that tier where you've got a good player and you can make him a great player? Or do we keep being little broed all the time? Because I've got to be honest, this needs to be decided by the club, not just Eddie Howe, by the club very, very quickly. We are losing out on key targets and we are not prepared for this season. So sorry for the extended conversation. I really want to say that because I think it's needed. A decision needs to be made on those tiers, young or regardless of age, middle level ability. Do we go and pay the money to get them, or do we keep pushing for those elite young level players where we're probably going to be mid to last in that list? Sorry, Daz, go on.
No, what you said there is it perfectly kind of tees up what I was going to say as well, because and first of all, you've been thinking about this a lot by the pool out in Greece, but Pete and Chatters, like we finished the league in the Champions League position. Okay, we always say there'll be one list of players for if we get into the Champions League. There'll be another list of players if we get into Europa League, Conference League. We've obviously been working through the Champions League list, and we've gone after our top targets. Most of them are listed on the top of this poster. Pete has now listed out potentials that could be on a Europa League kind of thing. They're not bad players. They might need a bit more work, a bit more development. Might be that bit older. There might be some little flaws that the others don't have. But this is Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe can get the best out of this. He'll turn a 30 million pound player into a 60 million pound player. You know, so he has the ability to do that. Now he needs time to do that as well. That's where you wanted things in early, and you can't blame him for wanting to go after his top targets first. It's and as Peter says, it's obvious we're getting blocked left, right, and center as we do so. So yeah, we do need to maybe step down a level, but not altogether. I think we can still go after the second on the Champions League list that he has, but maybe we need to step down as well and go. This is back again to the frustrating thing that Newcastle are they're a bit amateurish. and amateurish at this moment in time, because they're not able to do 2 deals at the same time, and they should be going after multiples in a way. Look, we have 2 excellent scouts, Andy Howe and Steve Nixon, that are trying to do this thing behind the scenes. We've now got Eddie trying to do it since the second day of his holiday, and now he's back in pre-season and going off to Asia. Blah 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 blah. They need help. The agent that PIF brought in to try and assist in that Hugo Ekitike deal. It's like we need more of that. We need more experts to try and assist here, because we've only have a number of weeks left. But you're right, Pete. You've named off. So I wouldn't be surprised that some of the names you said there, some have been mentioned before or suggested before. Others are new that you come up with. Probably have a comment on at least half of them that you're listed there. But no, we do have to go in another direction to try and get something together here, because it's a massive season ahead. We've got trying to fight in multiple competitions, and we can't have another season like we did the last time we were in the Champions League. I know we have James Bunce, who will, again, like Eddie Howe, will work miracles, but there's only so much he can do as well. We don't even have a backup striker for Alexander Isak. Crazy.
It baffles me. It absolutely baffles me that we're going into our pre-season tour of South Korea and Singapore, and we haven't got a backup for Alexander Isak. Like we've lost Wilson, we still haven't got a backup. A backup needs to be getting regular minutes so they're up to speed. We know what Alexander Isak's about. We know his ability, but what we don't know is the guy that's coming in. He doesn't know the play. You need to understand Eddie Howe's playbook to be able to play the way that we want to play. This is why he pushed so hard to get Elanga in the door. So he knows the playbook and he's ready to go before the end of the season. But the reality is, Daz, and you made a really good point. Like, we're all touched on it. We're all singing from the same hymn sheet here. We all know the score. People in the chat are agreeing, and you guys know the score as well. But my question is that are Newcastle United going to make that decision now? Because it has to happen now. We cannot afford for this to drag on. We cannot afford for next week to be another wasted week where nothing gets done. We need a signing in before they fly off to Asia by Friday. Ideally, a striker. We need somebody going in, because if Isak is having to manage his minutes, we need somebody else that's viable, that can play in that game against Arsenal over in Singapore or South Korea, wherever it is. That needs to happen. But I just wanted to make a point, is that unlike Man City and Chelsea when they had their takeovers, they were in a position where they could put the money down and put the wages down and do the next thing and get that player in. And that's fine. We're not in that position. We can't do that. But if we're going to keep shopping in these in Harrods, as Chris quite rightly mentioned, if we're going to keep shopping in Harrods, right, we need to take one of these players. You can't keep shopping in Harrods and not buying anything and walking out empty-handed. If you're going to shop in Harrods, pay more wages or pay more fee, even if it's one player. Go and pay the fee to get the guy out the door, to show, because it's not just us as fans, it's to show other players that you can do it. You've got to show. You can't walk away from this summer with losing Brian Mbeumo, Mateus Cunha, João Pedro, Hugo Ekitike, and maybe one other if we lose out on another player, and then go into the next window and go, yeah, we want that player, because that player's going to turn around and go, you can't afford me. You can't afford the wages or the fee. I've seen what you did with all the other clubs and you just got pied. Newcastle United cannot continue to be pied. If Eddie Howe and the team want to keep shopping in Harrods, you got to come out with something. You got to walk out with a Harrods bag, and you got to walk out with something that shows that it was worth the shopping trip in the first place. Otherwise, it's a complete waste of time.
Go buy a teddy bear. Go buy a teddy bear.